Edition of our Thursday night's class. Parashat Shelach, Shabbat Mevarchim, Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, Haba Aleinu L'Tova. Tammuz is Rashi Tevot, Zman Tshuva Memashmesh Uba. It's time to start getting ready for Rosh Hashanah Kippur. We're a little over 90 days to Rosh Hashanah. That's it. If you don't start now, Im Lo Achshav Matai. If we don't begin now, when is it going to be? When a person, B'Shat Tova, gets engaged, so the preparations start that day. So Shavuot, we got married, not just engaged, to God. So the preparations for our first big test, it's Rosh Hashanah, has to be that way. That's why Tammuz is Rashi Tevot. Sfarim HaKadoshim say it, it's not me. Zman Teshuvah Memashmesh Uba. The time of Teshuvah is already around the corner. You have to be ready for it. And we hope that Chodesh Tammuz should be Haba Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael L'Tova. It should be a month that should turn around from Shiva Asar Tammuz to a Yom Tov, like the Navi promises that all these hot things are going to end up being great holidays one day, Be'ezrat Hashem. And hopefully that day will already be this year. Parashat Shelach has a theme in it that for many years straight we've been speaking about, each year in a different direction. And this year, Bli Neder, we're also going to speak about it in the way that Hashem gives us for this year. So the original quote is the pasuk, and the question you've heard, but the answer hopefully will be a new direction this year. Moshe Rabbeinu Shlach Lecha, it goes on based on his own decision. God tells him that for your dat, meaning Hashem hinted to him that maybe something bad is going to come out of this. But under the request or pressure or whatever you want to call it of the Jews, he sends spies to Israel. Now a spy's job is to see to be a video camera, to see information and to repeat it back. This was before the days of videos. That's his job. That's what they send him for. So they pick giants, the heads of the Jewish nation, and they send them to do what's called a sensitive task, to go find out what's going on and to give a report, which based on this report, many decisions are going to be made. And Moshe Rabbeinu already knew in advance that this is not going to be so simple. And the proof to it is, Chazal say that based on the pasuk, that he changed Hoshea's name to Yehoshua. Why did he change Hoshea's name to Yehoshua? Ya Yoshiacha me'atzat meraglim. He gave him a special blessing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should save you from the outcome of what these meraglim are going to end up doing. There was one other that was saved as well. His name was Chur. Chur was saved in the merit of what? This is the first source in the Torah to this idea clearly, that you actually see a Yeshua, you save yourself in such a situation, that he went to pray by Kivrot HaTzadikim. He went to Hebron, right? When everybody else went other places, he went to Hebron to pray by Ma'at HaMachpelah. Now really, what? Sorry, Kalev, yeah. Kalev went to pray by Ma'at HaMachpelah, and that's how he was saved. Really, in the Torah, it's already hinted before that Yaakov Avinu buried Rachel on the way, so one day the Jews should be able to pray there, so we see the idea before. But clearly where it states the outcome immediately that a person went and prayed and got a result is here. Okay, up to here is very simple. They come back and they do their job, and they did their job very well, honestly. They gave an exact report. If you look at the psukim, to save time on having to quote them all, I won't, but you should see them inside. Pay attention by Kriyat Torah. You'll see that they come back and they said, we went to the place, and they even said compliments. Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvashi, V'zeh Pirya, and they brought back samples of fruit as they were told to do. They didn't think of this idea on their own. And but then they added in a statement that didn't really work well. That they said that the nation that's there is Chazak V'imenu, is stronger than us. Lo nuchalo, we won't be able to beat them. And that was the beginning of their downfall. But up till here, the Torah doesn't call it that they said something bad. Even though it seems like already from many indicators in the psukim that this wasn't so right. The Torah doesn't say it clearly. Only after that, the pasuk says in Lamed Bet, "Vayotziu dibat haaretz asher taru ota el bnei Yisrael lemor haaretz asher avanu ba," and so on. After they already showed the fruit and said that it's an Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, and the analysis was we won't be able to win a war, then comes the part that the Torah says that they went and spoke Lashon Hara about Israel, and this was like a terrible thing that they did, which cost the Jews a very heavy price. It cost the Jews a heavy price to the point that indirectly we pay a consequence until this very day. Because as a result of this whole situation, you cried tears for no reason, and then Shabbat every year is a direct result of this, meaning the destruction of the temples and all this came out of this terrible story. And that's the direct link of Chuban Beit HaMikdash was because Sinat Chinam. Sinat Chinam, we had explained in previous years, Sinah means hate, Chinam means for no reason. If somebody hates somebody for no reason, then he's a nutcase. That's not a normal person. Torah doesn't talk about nutcases. So how do you hate somebody for no reason? Normally when you hate somebody, it's for a reason. The guy went and backstabbed you, so now you hate him. Not that that's justified, but at least there's a reason. That makes sense. Sinat Chinam. I hate you. You know why? No reason. It doesn't add up. So the Chavetz Chaim is bothered by this, many others before him, but the Chavetz Chaim says his own biur. The Chavetz Chaim's biur is, Sinat Chinam means that a person hates somebody else based on facts that aren't true. What does that mean? So the Chavetz Chaim with his Shmirat HaLashon says, one guy went to his friend and told him Lashon Hara about person B. And it was Motzi Shemra, it never even happened. A goes to B and tells him, B, you think Mr. C is your friend? He's not really your friend. You know what he told me about you yesterday? The whole thing was made up. And now B hates C because he says he's a backstabber. Look what he said about me. But really, does he have a reason to hate him? No, because it never happened. It was just somebody else's lie. Because the Chavetz Chaim says, that's Sinat Chinam. So the Chavetz Chaim says the whole shoresh of Chuban Beit HaMikdash and the reason why the temple is not being rebuilt is really the sin of Lashon Hara and Motzi Shema and Chilut, these sins of talking bad about people. That has a direct link to the spies that spoke bad about Israel. Up to here is very simple. Everybody knows this. Is what it says this all in the Sfarim. But then when the Torah starts saying that they spoke bad, you look what it says. We went to the land. Eret yochedet yoshvea. It's a land that eats its people. What does it mean eats its people? Rashi brings down Chazal that they saw a lot of funerals. Was it a lie that they saw a lot of funerals that day? No, it was actually the truth. So what do you want from them? They said the truth. That was the report. And all the people that we saw in Shemidot were giants. Did Israel have a lot of giants? Yes, they did. A long collection of names in the Torah and the Psukim are different people that were very large in their physical being that lived in that territorial land. So again, they didn't lie. Another type of giants. So what's the dibara? They were sent on a mission, they did their mission, and they came back and gave a very objective report. Well, what's this whole noise that they said, Lashon Hara, about Israel? What was the alternative? To skip a bunch of details? Lo aleinu v'lo alechem, and this happens way too often, that people call others, I'm not talking about young kids that don't know what's right and wrong al pi halacha. I'm talking about Talmidei Chachamim that should have learned the halachot, to find out about a shidduch for somebody else, and they skip details that al pi halacha you do have to say. And then the shidduch comes out, and everybody thinks mazal tov, and it ends in a divorce 3 weeks after the wedding. And after 120, this person who didn't say the truth when he should have, he's the one held accountable for that divorce, not the young couple. Because if he would have not hid the information that should have not been hidden, because there are halachot in these things of what you have to say and what not, and if you don't know what to say, I don't know, just get out of it somehow. Don't pick up your phone. Then you can be causing damage to somebody else. I think I said this many times. I have a rule. When somebody calls me, or when I make a phone call to find out information about a guy from one of my sisters, or a favor for somebody about a guy or a girl, and of course the friend is going to say, most amazing person, best midot, so sweet, so this, so that. So I pause them, I say, stop right here. All that I know, I don't need you to tell me. Tell me what the person's problems are. And of course they're quiet, they don't say anything. Problems? I said, oh, so somebody who has no problems in my world is an angel, not a human. I'm sorry, my sister needs to marry a human. And I hang up the phone, that's it, it's all over. I don't want to hear any further. So tell me the problems, we'll see if we can deal with them. Not every problem's the end of the world. And then based on that, I'll make a rational decision if this is applicable for me or not. But somebody's perfect? Nobody has any problem anymore? Everybody's 100% perfect? In halakha, it's not like that. You have to learn the halachot. I'm not saying any halakha l'maaseh, what you're supposed to say, what you're not supposed to say, how you're supposed to word it, how not. But here the Meraglim went and gave objective information. That's all he did. Didn't hide anything. So there's many pshatim over the years. If you look at the previous, listen to the previous classes, each year we said a different pshat. This year I want to take a pshat that we actually used last year, but expand on it a lot more in a huge way. Because I think that this is really a big foundation. And I want to base this off of something that I said in Israel in a speech, not this past Wednesday night, 1 week ago Wednesday night, meaning 8 days ago. And I got a lot of slack for it. And I'm very proud of that, because that means it woke up a lot of people from their sleep. And I'm going to repeat it and say it as it is. A lot of times, if a person's in a situation, but they get distracted by other things, then instead of dealing with their actual situation, they end up dealing with the symptoms instead of the problem. Sometimes, lo aleinu v'lo alechem, somebody could have back pains. Not a fun thing to have. Back pains could either be nothing. A muscle, it is, the tiniest thing. Or, God forbid, it could be a spinal injury, it could be a tumor that's causing pressure, it could be terrible things. We should never know only on Sonei Israel. This Kim guy, maybe next week, he should take all the problems of the Jews, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Sonei Israel. And many others. I know a lot of soccer fans are not going to like me right now, but if the reason why Argentina didn't want to come play in Israel soccer, not that I care about soccer at all, is because the game was supposed to be in Jerusalem, then it should go on their team also. You can't make peace with the fact that the Jews own the land historically, and we have to be one of these idiots to say otherwise. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't like these things. He gets very upset. He's very protective over his children. And this has nothing to do with whether the state of Israel is according to the Torah or not. It has to do with the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Am Yisrael a gift called Eretz Yisrael, period. That's where it starts and ends. Beyond that, anything else is not up for discussion. A guy goes to a doctor. He says, I have back pains. The doctor says, go take an MRI. And he says, okay, I'll go take an MRI. Before he goes to go to an MRI, he says, I'm going to go for a second opinion. Idiot. Second opinion, you go after the MRI, not before. He decided he's doing it his way. Today, a lot of people have their own way. So he goes to a second opinion. Who does he go to? One of these holistic doctors. What are the tragedies of the world? Holistic doctor, I don't know if you're allowed to go to it all, by the way. There's no science behind it that's considered Kiwi Mechalel Shabbat to take vitamins? No. To take medicine, yeah. What's the difference? That this saves lives and this, we don't know what it does. It might be, it might not, but we don't know. It's very vague. He goes to a holistic doctor. The doctor tells him, sir, you're under a lot of stress. So we have to help you relax. Start going to yoga. You'll stretch, you'll relax, you'll meditate, your back pains are going to go away. He goes to yoga, shmoga, this, that, and he feels so relaxed, but his back pains are still there. But he's not going to say he's still there, because still there means MRI. MRI means there might be a problem. So what does he convince himself? I must be a stressed out person. So now instead of going to the MRI, he goes to a psychiatrist and he takes anti-anxiety medication, which I'm not saying shouldn't be taken. Many people have to take it, and it's a very good thing for them to take it. It helps people a lot. But in his case, that's not the story. Go get checked, see what the problem is. Months later, when that doesn't work, he finally concedes. He goes to the doctor, they take an MRI, they see there's a huge tumor, it's too late, they can't get it out, and very quickly they call the Chevra HaKadisha. In Shamayim, when he comes after 120, they're not going to blame him. Why? Because in those situations, people don't think. They operate with emotions. But where was the mistake? That he dealt with the symptom, meaning the pain, instead of dealing with what's actually going on. Instead of checking what's really happening here and dealing with the actual problem, they dealt with the symptoms. So here's what I said last week on Wednesday. Very out of character because it's very pessimistic, but it was a wake-up call to many, many, many parents that needed to hear it. I don't know the people that were present, but the recording later on went viral and that had to be heard. I said, we're busy talking about kids today that struggle terribly. Our teens, boys and girls alike, in all communities, in all parts of the Jewish communities around the entire world, there's no one place that you could pick, are all struggling. And I said, let's do a little mathematical equation in the state of Israel. In the state of Israel in 2001, at least according to the surveys of the government, there was 961,000, I think, Orthodox Jews in the state of Israel. In honor of the 70th birthday to the state of Israel, 17 years later, this year, they put out numbers every year, but this year they put it out again, and they said there's a drop over 1 million Orthodox Jews. Now, I don't know if you know how the Orthodox community works in Bnei Brak, but if a woman over there, God forbid, only has 12 children, they say for Perek Shira, Shira Shirim, and Hazit, she only has 12 kids. Hazit, only 12. Meaning our multiplication is very large. Add on to that other factors. In many secular circles, and I'm not saying this to the good or the bad, the average age marriage is in the upper 30s. In a lot of the Haredi circles in Israel, Bnei Brak is for sure an example, the average age marriage is 21. So our generation are 80% quicker than others. So if in 2001 we had 961,000, I'm not saying that's the right number, but that's the number that I was fed, Orthodox Jews, then in 2018 we should have 2 million, at least. I don't know the mathematics, honestly, but at least in my logic, it should be at least double. And in reality, the number grew barely by 20,000. Now, what happened also to all the Baalei Tshuva? There's a huge movement of people that came closer to Judaism in the past 17 years. So it's not only the natural multiplication, add all of those on top of it, which would be 3 million probably. So then what? So what's going wrong? And it's a very painful thing that's going wrong. That we have a lot of kids physically. We have a lot of Baalei Tshuva physically, but for every one we gain, we lose a few along the way that are going the other way, that are not Orthodox Jews anymore. And the ratio is working against us, not for us. And that people don't like hearing. So over there I told the parents, if this is such a tragedy that's going on, and I'm not blaming these kids, God forbid, they're kids that are in terrible pain and suffering a lot, and they're all anusim, there's no doubt about it, and let's get that clear for once and for all. These are not, in Shamayim, they're all tzaddikim, that's not the subject. But it's our children, we want to help them, right? We want to make sure that they grow up okay. So what do we do today when a child starts struggling? Instead of dealing with the issue, we deal with the symptom. And let me break it down to you very simply. There's a joke about Satma, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I just mean in a very factual way, and the timing might be right too after they made that NASA Coliseum event on Sunday. That anytime somebody has a problem in Satma, he has an easy way out. You have a headache, it's the Zionist's fault. You have a business not going well, it's the Zion. Everything is the Zionist, the Tzionim they call it. That's the way they blame everything. They have their ideology, which I don't even think comes from their original Rebbe, that's a separate story. And that you have to be careful to say, I don't want to get killed tonight. But they have their variation of the way they twisted the original ideology of their anti-Zionistic move. And today, everything automatic. What is that? It's the Yitzhara. I'm not saying I ain't no Zionist. That's not a secret. I'm a Zionist in one sense. Beshuv Hashem and Shivat Zion. I pray every day that we should go back to Zion, Yerushalayim HaKodesh, and instead of 120 Chavrei Knesset, we should go down to 70, whatever, Anshei Sanhedrin, like it was, and God willing, that'll happen very soon. But I still love Israel. One has nothing to do with the other. I still think that a Jew's place where we all belong is Israel. From being in Israel, from being somebody who loves Israel, we don't have to take it to extremes. Why do people take it to extremes? Because the Yitzhara wants to distract people from the importance of Kedushat Eretz Yisrael and the great mitzvah of being in Eretz Yisrael every second, even if you were there for 5 minutes. There's a Chazal that says, Gemara that says, that when you walk Daled Amot in Eretz Yisrael, 8 feet in Israel, Mochalim lo kol avonotav, Hashem forgives you all your sins. Understand what's going on here? That's just, you walk 4 Amot in South Beach, you lose your Gan Eden on the spot. Look at the difference between vacation destinations that you pick where to go. Look at the difference. Simple choice. One's a flight this way, one's a flight that way. That's the difference. Unbelievable. Right? That goes without saying. So how does the Yitzhara get somebody away from going to Israel and walking 4 Amot like this? Simple. He distracts him. He gives him all different stories. So to a young kid, he could tell him, go somewhere else is more exciting instead. But to an older, serious man, what does he tell him? No, the state of Israel is not good, don't go. That's called Vayotziu Dibat Haaretz. Don't talk bad about Hashem's land. I said, with our kids, the same exact thing is happening. Every school, you go to the principal, and you tell him, sir, what's going on that we're losing 15, 20% of your kids. By the time they're out of 12th grade, It's as if they never learned any yeshiva or Beis Yaakov. What do you think is the only answer they will ever give you? Smartphones. The technology era. Now, I'm not here to say anything against, God forbid, the Yisrael that have their opinions about technology and the restrictions that we should take. And everybody should be responsible in the way he understands, and especially when it comes to social media, just not to waste your life and be a moron. But that's not the subject. But maybe we got so distracted with anti-internet campaigns that we forgot that that's not the problem, that's the symptom. Why does a kid need to go to a smartphone? Why does the average adult male, forget about child, this was on the news today, in case you missed it, spend over 6 hours out of 24, and that's assuming that he's an adult male that sleeps 7.5 hours at night, on his phone. More than that. Yeah. And who's saying this? Not the people that have an agenda against phones. Apple is the one who spent the money to come up with this research. The phone manufacturer itself is the one who's devoting time now to help people get over this addiction. Why does a person need to go seclude himself and isolate himself from the world for 6 hours a day? Because the world is not a place that accepts him for who he is. And on the phone you can have a virtual world and create your own reality. And when you have to face people, you have to face the actual reality. And the actual reality is not always so nice. So instead of the principal saying, I'm losing 20% of my kids because I don't smile to them enough, or because my teachers don't get paid enough to be able to have the peace of mind to give the kids the love that they need, and parents work 2 jobs and 3 jobs and 4 jobs, and as a result they're never home. And I'm not blaming anybody, it's just the way the system's running. The easiest way out, it's how I gave us an answer. The internet, everything's the internet. Soon they're going to say the reason why we have so many cancer patients is also the internet. Everything's going to be the internet. You can't look for the symptom. You got to look for the core of the issue. So I want to give you a quote. Here's a quote that I actually sent out. Excuse me for taking out my phone. I just want to quote it word for word. And I have the picture of the page on my phone. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody. And yes, this is a kosher iPhone in case you wanted to know. Whatever that means. But somebody put some seal on it. Thank God. That means you can't check the lottery numbers on it because the filter doesn't allow it. It's true. I want to know. So I don't buy, somebody has to stop buying lottery tickets. I can't even check them anyway. I'll give you a quote from a sefer from Maran Rav Shach Zitzal. This sefer wasn't written by Rav Shach himself. Rav Shach wrote the Avi Ezri. All the other Sfarim, which I know we have many, and one recent one that I quoted from a few weeks ago, all came out from his grandson, who's a Talmid Chacham Muflag. There's no way to describe what a genius in Torah he is, who had the zchut to practically live on his grandfather's lap his whole life from the day he was born. And his name is Rav Asher Bergman. So Rav Asher Bergman, in a sefer that he put out called Ochot HaBayit, and the print that I'm quoting from, in case anybody looks up the page, they should see it, is Tafshin Samech Hey. On page Reish Yudaled and Reish Tet Vav, he brings that, and I quote word for word, Hayom, these days, Mefachadim latet le'iladim ahava. We're scared to give kids love. Ve'ein anu mevinim, and we don't understand. Ki zeu hadavar hachashuv biyoter lechinuch ha'iladim. That is the most important thing for parenting. There's not more important than, what's the most important thing to be a parent? Not to teach them Torah, not to bring them to synagogue, not to preach, not to tell them to have respect. None of the above. Hadavar chashuv biyoter, the most important thing, lechinuch, la'anik lahem harbe chom ve'ahava, to give over a lot, not just a lot of love. Divrei Maran Rosh HaYeshiva Rav Shach Zitzal Zecher Tzadik Livracha Zchutei Yagen Aleinu. So I turned to the parents over there, which I really meant the recording that I knew would go viral afterwards, and I said, so instead of wasting your time on the color of the shirt and the buttons and the phones and the internet and all these other things, which maybe should or shouldn't be addressed, that the Yisrael should decide, who am I? Maybe we should deal with the actual problem. Maybe we should deal with the problem that our average teenage boy and girl doesn't remember the last time his father or mother came and said, I'm proud of you, and hugged him and kissed him. Maybe that's where we should start before we look for all these other things to make campaigns about. Maybe we should gather in Nassau Coliseum to give people a little wake-up call that if we're not going to love our children, then they're going to go to the phone, because at least the phone doesn't hate them. And at least on Instagram, they get likes. And at home, they don't get likes. They get thumbs up, they get all these emojis. Some of them are really special. And all of that they don't get at home. And all that they don't get in the school system. In the school system they get a test, and if they don't get a 95 and above, the teacher doesn't even care to say, well done. Because to her it's not well done, or to him it's not well done. You didn't get a high grade. What do you mean you didn't get a high grade? You know what this kid went through the night before to study? You know how hard it is for this kid to focus for 5 minutes? So he got a 40, so what? Write you're amazing and change that mark to 100. Let him feel good. But that's not something that we're willing to talk about. How do I know that I'm right on this one? Because, did it raise a lot of controversy in Israel. And it became the talk of the day, and I had a big zchut. I love being in the controversies. And I had a big zchut that I woke up a lot of people, and they decided to go to all different Gedolei Yisrael in Bnei Brak. Now I'm getting all the letters in next week, Bli Neder, so then I'll give you the letters if you want to see them. And one by one, they all said I'm right. Not I'm right. They said it's simple logic. He didn't say anything. It's ABC. So instead of looking for, he said, one of the Gedolim that they went to told them that there's a very famous Jewish parable. Nobody knows where it comes from, but it's a famous Jewish parable that in a town which either did or didn't exist called Chelim, which was the symbol of dummies or not so intelligent people in the Jewish world, they had a bridge that had a hole in it, and people were falling off the bridge and drowning. And by the time they would get them out and bring them to the hospital, it was too late, the people were dead. So they had a town meeting and they said, what are we going to do to fix it? They said, we'll build a hospital under the hole in the bridge. Unfortunately, that's what it seems like we're all doing. Instead of dealing with what's actually going on, that all we're missing is a few hugs, and all these kids need is some validation and some love and to be accepted for who they are, not for who you decided for them that you want them to be. That's it. That's all it is. But tonight I'm not here on a parenting class. So I want to tell you what this has to do to each and every one of us at every age. Comes the Alter from Slobodka and says, you want to know what the sin was? And this point we said last year, and I want to elaborate on it more this year. He says the pasuk has a few more words that we don't really pay attention to, because it seems like just an addition after all the psukim there. It's just another sentence. Vanihi be'eineinu kachagavim. And because we were standing near such big giants, we felt near them like grasshoppers. V'chein hayinu be'eineihem. And that's the way we were in their eyes as well. Comes the Alter from Slobodka and says over here there's two sins. Sin number one is, who gave you the right to feel small? Why don't you feel great? And in a moment we'll explain where that sin, what that sin really means. What do you mean? You're not supposed to be arrogant. What about humility, being humble, most important qualities that there are? Comes the Alter and says, and there's a second sin. And over here he says a little different than what it seems like Rashi writes. V'chein hayinu beineihem. He says, who told you that that's what they were thinking about you? So you first dream a fantasy of what the other person thinks about you. And then based on the fantasy you conclude, and then let it affect you. Don't build a fantasy. Don't decide what somebody else thinks about you, and don't let it affect you. And I want to add on to his words, and even if he does think about it, so what? So he thinks about you, now what? Congrats. And therefore what? Who cares? He doesn't pay your bills. You don't owe him anything. You had nothing to do with him. And have a good day. You want to think. You want to say. I have to decide who I am based on what you dictated that you think I am? The Alter in Madrigat Adam says that's the sin of the Meraglim, that they lowered the self-esteem of Am Yisrael. They caused the Jewish people to have less self-esteem, less self-dignity, less pride, and to believe in themselves less. We have a terrible, terrible tragedy going on in our community. And it's a lot worse than all the other issues that we're facing today. And that's that our boys and girls don't believe that they can. Because they're written off practically when they're born. The first time the kid makes the first mistake in school, he's already called a bum, a loser, a dropout, a child at risk, and a whole bunch of other names. ADD, ADHD, and a few others. And at that point, they just wrote a kid's life off. Instead of understanding the fact that he has such tests doesn't make him less, it makes him so much more. And that's why the Yitzhar has to invest so much time in him. That's it, he's written off. And when a kid is written off at a young age, what goes into his mind? I can't. And if I can't, I won't. Unbelievable, no? Why isn't this going to change? I hope it does, but unfortunately, I don't see it changing at least. I'm saying it's changing in minority groups, but in the big scheme of the problem, it's not changing. Because it's a system. So first we created a box. Then everybody has to fit in the box, and whoever doesn't fit in the box, now we're going to label him with something. Let's solve the problem from the source. Maybe we should break the walls of the box. That's what the Torah is telling us here. What? Because somebody else decided that that's what you have to be. Now if you're not that, so something's wrong with you? I'm not sure which is a greater tragedy. For a mother to tell a kid that you can't do it, or for a mother to tell a kid, you could be the next Gedol Hador. I'm not sure which one is worse. But they're both equally bad, that's for sure. Because if a mother tells a kid, you'll be the next Gedol Hador, what's she telling him? That if you're not the next Gedol Hador, you're not good enough, you failed. And the kid is not going to be the next Gedol Hador. That's not what his capabilities are. So before his life started, it was already written off. He stands no chance. Meaning not only the negative terminology that we use towards kids is terminology that's destroying them, the positive terminology is destroying them as well. We got to stay grounded to the reality of what a person really can or can't do. And even that, how do you know? You don't know, so don't say it. Be quiet. And the only thing that you do know is that people need love, because you need to be loved too, so give love to people. That's where it starts and that's where it ends. But now I want to say an unbelievable pshat. I saw this in a sefer called Benoam Siach on this week's Parashat. This is an unbelievable pshat. Rashi, if you look at Rashi, when he talks about these chagavim, chagavim literally means some version of grasshoppers. Rashi says, Shamanu amrim ze lazeh. We heard people, he quotes it to Midrash, we heard people talking to each other saying, Nimalim yesh bakramim ka'anashim. There are ants in amongst the vineyards walking around. They look like people. Meaning these giants, when you look from above, right, you're in an airplane, 30,000 feet up, you look down, everything looks like, they were way up there. They looked at these people, they looked like this. But on the other hand, they looked human. They said, we look down, we see people the size of ants, but they look like people. This is what they heard them say. Comes the Sefer Benoam Siach, and he says he has a very tough question on this midrash. The pasuk clearly states chagavim, grasshoppers. Why did the midrash change the word to nimalim, to ants? So really, in some of the midrashim, it says in parentheses, farim acherim, there was a different girsa ke chagavim. That was their way out, to say that it's a printing mistake. But in the regular midrashim that we have, it says ki nimalim, and that's what Rashi quotes. So in the Sefer Benoam Siach, he writes an unbelievable chidush. And he says he heard it from an Adam Gadol, but I don't think he writes who. He says, this is the way the cycle of people's self-destruction happens. Look at him, he's so small. One person, it kills him. The other person, it doesn't kill him. What does it depend on? What does the person think about himself before? Once they on their own said that we are grasshoppers, then from there to get smaller and become an ant based on what somebody else tells you is very easy. But if they would have not written themselves off as grasshoppers, and when they would have said, we're great, it makes no difference physically how tall or short we are, then nobody would have been able to convince them that they're ants. So the Midrash is writing the cycle to warn us, don't get into that cycle. If you think about yourself as 100%, then you'll stay 100%. But the day you think about yourself as 50%, to go from 50 to 0 is really, really quick. Really, really quick. Today when I arrived in Queens, it was relatively early. I was looking for a parking spot on Main Street that didn't require a meter. I'd rather give a quarter to charity than to give it to New York City. I have another, personal thing. And I get out of the car. I found one. And I get out of the car. I'm standing outside waiting because I have to wait 2-3 more minutes before the appointment I had scheduled. And there's a boy whose face looks extremely familiar, but his entire everything else doesn't look so familiar. So I wasn't sure if I know him from my little town called Lakewood or not. And as soon as I heard him talk on his phone, The voice I recognized already. And it's a boy that used to pray in a synagogue that I prayed in. Unfortunately, I'm not judging him, God forbid. He's a sweet, sweet boy. He wasn't wearing a kippah. And not that that's the most important thing in the world, but yeah, it stood out. This is an ex-yeshiva boy, obviously. And very quickly, by looking at his short sleeves that he was wearing, otherwise known as his arms, there was plenty marks on his veins. We won't elaborate because there's some minors here. And I had maybe 2 minutes left, but I said, this is pikuach nefesh, and I walked up to him and I said, you remember me? He said, sure, Yaakov. I said, yeah. I said, what are you doing in Queens? He said, I work here. What are you doing? Construction. Tells me for who? Some company, a Jewish guy that I know. I think that we all know, he lives here in the neighborhood. I said, what are you up to in life? He said, I'm in and out of recovery. I said, wow, I'm impressed that you're even trying. I'm sure it's not easy for you. Thank God I don't know what it's about, but from what I hear and from what I understand on the medical terminology, it seems like a very big problem. And he says, you want to know something? I think I finally figured out last night the reason why I'm having so much trouble recovering. It's weird, like I wasn't his friend or anything. He's much younger than me. I know his parents, I'm friends with his parents, they're more my age. The whole thing was weird. And suddenly on the street, he's telling me he's opening up. But who knows, maybe it's the only time he's going to say the truth to somebody. And I said, yeah, what's that? He said that deep down, I feel like I'm always going to be a disappointment to my surroundings. I said, why do you say that? And he said, you remember the way I used to look? I said, yeah, you were a cute Hasidic boy with peot curled and a beard and whatever, black kippah on your head. He said, yeah, and? I said, and what? He said, I went into yeshiva one day, I was 16 years old, and I decided I don't want one of these ugly beards. Beards are in fashion today. So I trimmed my beard, I made it look nice. It seems like according to their rules, or a Bible that they invented, that's a great sin. And he said, in school, they threw me out. And then I built the resentment to this whole attire, so I took it off completely. He says, so today, even if I was to learn all day and keep Shabbos and that, if I look like you, he tells me, gee, thanks for the compliment, I'll always be a goy. I'll always be a goy. And that's why, on one hand, I want to get better, but on the other hand, if deep down, I'm not stupid, and I know really there's something more productive to do than banging 2x4s all day. So, I don't know, I'm torn between worlds. And that's why these substances are an easy escape for me. I told him, Tzaddik, I'm on my way into a meeting now, come with me. We'll gain a few more minutes. He says, no, I'm at work, my boss will fire me. I said, you told me who you work for. Your boss and me are close friends. He ain't firing you. You want me to call him? I'll tell him that you're off for the rest of the day, and you'll get paid. You won't lose money. He's a really Yirei Shamayim and wants to help anybody who he can. So I call the boss and I tell him, can I borrow your boy for an hour now? He says, you could have him. I said, but I don't want him to lose money. He says, he's getting paid in full as long as he's with you. I said, look at that. You'll get overtime today. Overtime. What could be better? I wish somebody would offer me a job like that, by the way. I know the boss is going to watch this tomorrow, so that was a hint. But anyway, I take him into this little meeting that I had to have. Finished quickly. And I walked back outside and I told him, listen, I don't know who decided that whether you do or don't have a beard, if it makes a difference or not. I'm not here to argue the Hasidic movement, if it's right or wrong. I don't think they even say that, by the way. That's a separate story. I think some person along the way distorted to you a few facts, but it has nothing to do with it. I said, look, the majority of the Hasidic Jews today trim their beards and look very put together and are extremely acclimated in the business world and very, very successful people. And the biggest Baalei Chesed and Baalei Tzedakah, I deal with Chesed and Tzedakah most of my life, and unbelievable. I have only nice things to say about them. I said, but let's even say your theory is right. So they wrote you off. So therefore what? You think God wrote you off? No. I said, and what'd you just say? That if I look like a goy like you. I said, and the goy that you're looking at right here, Baruch Hashem, is very successful in many areas in life. And has had impact on tens of thousands of people over the years. So be a goy like me, it's not a bad idea. I said more than that. You want to come to my class tonight and speak instead of me? You're welcome to do that too, but there's one condition. No keepers going on your head. Don't put up no shows for nobody. The kid burst out into tears like a little baby crying right after he's born. And he said, why did nobody in the world ever tell me that I stand a chance? And I was embarrassed for him. It was the middle of the street. It was a very uncomfortable situation. What was the mistake? I don't think the mistake was the school. I'm not here to blame anybody. I think the mistake was within. He must have heard once when he was a kid from somebody that, Al Pi Kabbalah, there's a reason not to trim your beard, which is true. The Sfaradi Jews in Tashlich, we read that piece of Zohar, by the way. And in his mind, he didn't know how to associate what's Kabbalah, what's a Chumrah, what's a Minhag, what's this, what's that. So the day he decided to do it, before his Rebbe threw him out, or that might have not even happened, I didn't verify the facts yet, he already wrote himself off. He said, now I'm a goy. And once you're a goy, so what does it make a difference if you put on tefillin or not? What does it make a difference if you eat kosher or not? What does it make? Everything. It's a package deal. Goodbye with everything. But the day somebody on the street was randomly recognized him, it's a nest, it's not random. Hashem made him a nest. He loves his neshama. And sent him somebody to tell him, without a keeper, you're also worth something. What does one have to do with the other? You're a person. You're a human first. You're a Jew. You're worth something. That's it. So now the whole game changes. Everything else is different. And that's the first yesod that we have to learn in life. We have to look back at our own personal lives and quickly assess how many times in our life did we write ourselves off. And then we'll understand why we allow other people's thoughts about us to write us off. And then we stand a chance at rectifying that and maybe actually leading a successful life instead of a painful life. Those are the steps in that order. Literally in that order. And the Torah says that this is the sin that doesn't allow the Beit Mikdash to be rebuilt. It's individuals writing themselves off. There's an extremely famous quote/story from Rabbi Shol Salanta, Zecher Tzadik Levacha Zchutei Yagen Aleinu, the father of the Musar movement, who said that he was once on the street walking, and I know there's a sefer that brings down, it's called Tnuat HaMusar, in the second volume over there, they bring down a few details of the story that I don't remember, so you'll forgive me. But it says over there exactly where he was walking to and whatever, but I hope the details are missing don't make a difference to the story. And there was a guy who was with a wagon that was full of stuff, I guess a moving type of guy doing a delivery, and one of the bundles of things that he had on his wagon fell off. Now he didn't mean, I don't know if he meant to be bad, disrespectful, but to him to get off the wagon, to put it back on, and it was a whole story. And he saw a man standing right there, so he turned to Rabbi Yisrael and he said, "Sir, could you do me a favor? Pick up the thing and just throw it on top so I can continue." Rabbi Yisrael was about chesed, he would do anything for anybody. But he was an old man, and physically he wasn't capable of lifting something, it was dangerous to him. They told him, "I'm very sorry," politely, "but I'm an old man, and therefore I can't." And the guy got angry because he wanted help. So instead of saying, "I'm sorry, sir," and realizing, you don't ask somebody like for something you can't do, he said, "Never say you can't. Say you don't want." Rabbi Yisrael went to the yeshiva and he started crying when he was in the yeshiva, and none of his students were able to stop him from crying. And they asked him, "Rebbe, what happened? A tragedy hit?" He said, "No. A goy gave me more mussar than everything I learned my whole life together." He said, "After 120, I'm going to come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he's going to ask me this, and I'm going to say I couldn't. And he's going to tell me, never say I can't. Say I didn't care enough to do so." Everybody's able to believe in themselves. And the proof is, the Gemara says, chayav, there's an obligation, Adam, for a person, lomar b'chol yom, to say every day, b'shvili nivra ha'olam, the entire world was created just for me. If the Gemara says it's an obligation, I have simple faith. The Gemara didn't exaggerate. That means we are all capable of doing so. Now some of us don't want to do so, because to live in a situation of pity and self-pity, for unfortunately, and I'm not judging anybody, is a very comfortable place to be. It's a very sad, morbid place to be, but that's what we're known with, right? When you turn on the news, you don't see anything happy. One of the good things about that clown's wedding a couple of weeks ago was finally there was something semi-positive on the news. But otherwise, what do you hear? The The stock market went down, the banks are this one's that, this one's killing him, there's a war here, there's a fight there, tragedies, natural disasters, all years, negative, 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 negative. So all day long, all we hear is negative. So of course we become negative people. That's all we hear. That's why Reb Nachman already wrote the Eitzah for that years ago. That a person has to devote time throughout his day, besides for all his discussions and talking to Hashem and learning and davening, he has a whole different segment completely about listening to positive and funny things. That's what he says, positive and funny things, humor. Why? Because we're surrounded by so much negativity. At least if we have something funny, something positive, something uplifting, there's a chance to snap out of that cycle of pain and suffering. But if you don't have that, then what's left? There's nothing left. And then, if the world is so negative, so who am I? I'm just a little microbe in the world. So obviously, I must be also not worth much. So if I'm not worth much, so what's left? And then the ship sinks. And from there, the spiral downhill is so quickly. Comes Reb Nachman and writes an unbelievable thing. He says, nobody sins. There's no such thing as sinning. Except for one sin. It's shorish kol hachet, the root of all sin, hi ha'atzvut, it's sadness. When a person's sad, so now he needs an outlet. You need an outlet, so you have to text on Shabbat, you have to this, you have to that. But if a person's not sad, he doesn't need all these things. It's not applicable for him. He says, so therefore, instead of dealing with the symptoms, with everything around, let's deal with the source. Let's deal with the source. Somebody called me on the phone today and told me, La'aleinu La'achem should never know, that they have a sister that's dating a goy, and they're engaged to be married. There wasn't much that I was able to do, but I tried at least. Hashem should do the rest. Well, Hashem did everything, but he should, I don't know how much more I'll be able to do at this point. So I didn't have much time to ask questions. I just asked a couple of simple questions, and I said, do me a favor. Give me the person's phone number. So I call this girl, who I don't know who she is. I don't know anything about her. All I know is she's Jewish, and she has a frum sister. And this girl is not so observant, obviously, if she's engaged to be married to a guy. And I pick up, and she picked up right away. Very nice. And who is this, Yaakov? Oh, do I know you? You don't know me. I said, I don't know you either, by the way. It goes both ways. He said, so why are you calling me? I said, I'm calling to tell you that whether you get married a guy or not, I don't know what you're going to do. And it's not my business. I'm not going to pry into your business. But no matter what you do or don't do, you should never forget that you're a Jewish princess and Hashem loves you under all circumstances. Good luck. I'm sorry for taking up your time. I hope I didn't harass you. Have a wonderful day. And I was about to hang up. And before I was going to hang up, she says, wait a second. And I said, I'm done. You have anything to add? So she said, yeah. I said, what is it? She said, I'm going to hell anyway. I said, what do you mean you're going to hell anyway? What hell? You ever saw hell? I don't know. Where are you going exactly? You want to describe it to me, what goes on there? She says, I could be very descriptive. Later on I found out that she lives somewhere on the West Coast. She's an artist, so they could be super descriptive. She described me a scene from some horror movie. I don't know, maybe she's writing a script now or something. I don't know what she's doing with herself. Oh my God. And I said, and who sent you there? What made you decide that I said, first of all, who said that's there at all? Second of all, and who sent you there? And why is it anyway? And she starts listing to me names. I felt so embarrassed, I didn't know what to do with myself, of speeches that she heard on the internet, on a quote-unquote religious website, of people that pretty much said that she's going to hell. So I said, if I'm going to hell anyway, she says, I want to explain it to you in a way that you could understand. She tells me, you know anything about cooking? I said, no, unfortunately not. She says, anything to do with the kitchen at all? I said, I know how to grill. That I know. So she said, all right, so let's use a piece of meat as an example. These were her words. Let's use a piece of meat as an example. I said, okay, what's the example? So if you take a good steak, so people eat it either rare, medium well. If you don't know how to eat meat at all, it might go well. Like, you may as well just eat rubber, eat your tire for that sake. It's a lot cheaper. But whatever, it's a matter of personal taste. She said, did you ever hear of well plus? No, why? Because what's well plus? Burnt. Meaning once you go beyond a certain point, there's no description for it anymore. She said, hell is so hot that once you go there, it makes no difference. That's it. So if I have one sin or 100 sins or 1,000 sins or I marry a Gentile, it's all the same. And at least in this world, I'll enjoy myself because this guy actually loves me. Today, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the way here on the phone. I told him, my dear friend, I have news for you. Whether we'll talk again in my life, I don't know, because I'm never going to call you again. If you want, you can call me. But the only person that's going to hell is whatever recording that you heard, whoever sent you there, because that's who destroyed your life. I said, and that's why I called you and told you one and only one thing. What you do or not is not in my control. And it's not my business. And if you want help in any way, anything I could do to benefit your life in anything, in any field, gladly. But one thing I could tell you is that God's your Father, and He loves you, and He loved you, and He always will love you, and He can't wait to show you and express you that love very soon when Mashiach comes, very visibly. And there's nothing that you can do to get Him to change His feelings towards you. Whether this girl's going to change her life or not, I don't know. And honestly, it's not on my roster of things to call her back. Because I have a feeling that way before I ever get a chance to call her back, that guy is going to be out of her life. Because the whole thing was based on one simple mistake. She didn't believe she's worth anything. And for the first time in her life, instead of hearing some negative stories, she's actually worth something. With all her sins. And I'm not justifying sins, and I'm not justifying dating a non-Jew, and I'm not justifying the tiniest thing that even violates a chumrah of a Magen Avraham. But with all of that, a person's still a person, and a Jew is still a Jew. And B'ni B'chori Yisrael Asher Ahavta, the love of Hashem, is not contingent on any of those details. And that's the greatest lesson. Chafetz Chaim brings down for one reason, but there's so many other reasons that we could add on as well, that the person is not allowed to say Lashon Hara about himself. What does it mean to say Lashon Hara about yourself? Don't talk bad about yourself. Boys, here's a common guy language. I'm so stupid. That's Lashon Hara about yourself. You're not allowed to do that. Girls, here's a common girl thing. I'm so fat. It's Lashon Hara about yourself. Can't say it. That's not the way it works. Don't talk bad about yourself. Because what you say about yourself is what's later on going to subconsciously go into your head. And that's what you're going to start thinking about yourself. And from there, the road downhill is so quickly, it spirals out of control. Instead, why don't you wake up in the morning and say, I'm so great. Chayav Adam lomar b'chol yom b'shvili nivra olam. Now, how do you know that this is not arrogance, but actually an halachic, moral, ethical, and much more obligation? Let me give you a very simple rational case. I always tell you, logic is the strongest command in the world. We all agree to that. This doesn't come from me. The Pnei Yehoshua learns that out in Masechet Brachot, Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, from the Hilchot Birkot Hane'enim. He says, when you have a svara, when you have something that's simple logic, it has the power of a deoraita, of a mitzvah from the Torah. A Jew was created as a chelek eloka mimar, part of God. Our soul, neshama, is noshem yah. We breathe God, meaning we have God within us. If I look in the mirror and say I don't look good, what am I saying? God did a bad job, and God doesn't look good. If I say I'm stupid, what am I saying? God's stupid. If I say I can't, what am I saying? God can't. So what does that really mean? That a person who knocks himself or allows others to knock him is an atheist. Because if you really believe that Hashem's part of you, Hashem's flawless, so you're flawless too. Yeah, you have technicalities along the way that it might be a good idea to perfect. And that's a whole lifetime. And the day you perfected it all is the day you pass from the world, because there's no reason for you here anymore. But beyond that, if God's part of me, then that's it. Now I want to tell you one step further. I think it was 3 years ago, the first week after Leg Bomer, I told you an interesting observation that my Rebbe told me. And then we applied it to whatever it was, I don't even remember, but I just remember quoting him then. Every word that the Rebbe tells me, I remember clearly when he told it to me and in what context and why every word is Kodesh Kodashim. And this, I want to use it in a little bit of a different context. He made an interesting observation, which I hope you all remember, because it's a very important observation for life. He says, why is it when a person, which you never need, has to go through a heart surgery, for example? So he calls his friends and medical referral guys and this and that to find out who's the best doctor, the best cardiologist that there is in New York. And even if it costs him a huge copay out of his pocket, he pays money and he this and that. He doesn't just go into the crematory down the block, booth something, crematory, and say, cut my heart open and leave me here like they normally do. He goes the best of the best. And research, and he's busy online looking at all these websites, what the doctor's health grade ratings are, and if he had any lawsuits, and if this, and if that, all this research. Very simple, why? Because, if something goes wrong, then he might meet God face to face earlier than he was planning on. But wait a second. There are other things in life that we do that also have life risks. One of them is aviation. Any of you were on a plane in the past couple of weeks? I'm sure some of you were. I was on many. One of the beauties about planes is there's not much margin for error. If something goes wrong, it's over within a few minutes. Do you know anybody that came back from a plane crash? There are a few rare cases, but other than that, no. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. It's very unfortunate, right? That means your life is at risk when you go into the air. That's why so many people in America have all these phobias of flying. So why is it that a night before you're flying out to Israel, because after tonight's class I don't think you're going to be flying to Cancun anytime soon, unless it's to some program or something that's a little more according to the Jewish regulations. Don't you call Al the day before and say, listen, tomorrow I'm on flight 001, 1150. I don't know if there is such a flight at all. I just made that up. JFK to Tel Aviv. I need to know who the pilot is, who the co-pilot is, who the first officer is. Give me their names. Give me where they served in the army, how many years experience, how many flying hours, their license number, and a copy of their ID. Well, number one, because the halal clerk is not even going to listen, you'll get to hear a click very quickly. It'll be your cheapest phone call ever. It won't last 10 seconds. But theoretically, I fly a lot of times as a courtesy at the front of the plane. When I'm on the plane, the cockpit door is still open. Many of the pilots, especially in El Al, know me very well. A lot of them, when they spend 3 days on their layovers here in New York, I give them classes. Yeah, you'd be surprised how many of them are so spiritually connected. It's amazing. And I never went in, even though these are my friends, and asked them, what qualifications do you have? Well, I know this guy was a bus driver who happened to be sitting in a cockpit. How do I know otherwise? I don't know otherwise. I never even asked him if he has a license to fly a plane. If I need a doctor on me on Sonei Israel, then investigations and research and referrals and this and that and even if everything came out clean, all you need is one person to make a little face and we don't use the doctor anymore. But if the pilot, who you and 300 other people's lives are in his hands, nobody asks him for his license, nobody asks any questions. The FAA said he's okay. What do you mean the FAA says he's okay? So the medical world said this doctor's board certified. It's the same thing. That's a dumb excuse. You know what the answer is? If somebody's laying on an operating table and they cut his heart open and something goes wrong, the doctor that night's going home to watch football and drink beer. It's this guy who's going to the morgue. So now I got to find out what's going on with this doctor. But when I go on into an airplane and we're 38,000 feet in the air, the pilot's in the same ship as me. Something goes wrong with the plane, him and I, our fate is going to be exactly the same. And therefore I know he's going to do the best he can, that nothing should go wrong. And that's why in one place I have to ask. And in the other place, I take it for granted. We fly all the time, nobody ever paid attention to this. But yeah, that's the psychology behind it. If somebody's in it with me, automatically I'm more secure. Here you have your gift of self-confidence. Even when I walk in the valley of death, even when life's ugly, even when everything looks like it's turning against me, even when nothing's working right. Lo irara. I don't become somebody who has low self-esteem. I don't live in phobias. I don't flip out. I don't stress all day. Why? Ki ata, because you, God, imadi, you dwell in me. So if I go down, God, you're going down with me. And you're the pilot. You don't want to go down with me. You're not the doctor. You're part of me. You're not an external part of me. And if I don't feel well, and if I don't feel right, and if I don't feel that, that means that the basis of faith, of knowing that God dwells within me as in the same plane as me, doesn't exist. Come Chazal and say, when the Jews said, when the Meraglim said that V'chein hayinu beinehem, we were in their eyes as chagavim, as grasshoppers, Hashem said, oy vavoy, I don't accept this talk. This talk that you're saying that we were like grasshoppers, that means you forgot that I'm with you. If you forgot that I'm with you in every situation, that's bad news. Bad news brings Chuban Beit HaMikdash. The prime cause of sadness is loneliness. When a person feels lonely, he automatically feels sad. We spoke about this in many contexts over the years. Loneliness means there's no kiyata imadi, because otherwise I'm never alone. Yeah, we all go through hard times. They're very hard days. People have mood swings, people have ups and downs. Some of us have downs and downs. But deep, deep down, somewhere inside, we have to hold on to that message. I'm great, I can, and no matter what I do or don't do, or no matter how much I succeeded or didn't succeed, today we measure success in how many dollars we have in the account, how good we look or don't look, and a few other stupid things. And unfortunately, it's not even that stupid anymore. That was 20 years ago, on what somebody else decided to think about me. Today, when a person posts a picture of themselves on one of these places, and you should never do it, it's a dumb idea, and they don't get who knows how many likes right away and positive comments, they suddenly feel worthless. No wonder why we have who knows how many kids walking around the world feeling worthless. What a stupid way to live. What a senseless way to live. I made a social experiment. It's still ongoing. The end result I'll put in writing one day because I plan on submitting it. I took 100 students, most of them are non-Jews, from many schools, and I purposely picked very liberal schools, universities, prestigious liberal universities, that openly say about themselves and were diagnosed with severe depression. And many of them are medicated in this way or the other, rightfully so because of their conditions. And 50 out of the 100, I'm in the middle of this experiment, I'm not doing this on my own, I have doctors that are with me on this. We convinced them, after many hours of brainwashing, to shut all their social media pages. The other 50 we didn't say a word to about it. And there are doctors that are following this extremely closely for many weeks now, and I'm involved all the time. I get the reports on a daily basis practically, on the progress of healing of these and of these. I can't tell you the final results because this is a long study, it's still going to take a while, but at least we're about 9 weeks, I think, into it, or 9.5 weeks into it. As of 9.5 weeks into it, those who shut all their social media outlets, percentage-wise, are healing at 93.5% quicker pace than the others. You know why? Because they actually live in a real world. And they had the first time a chance to love themselves, instead of needing somebody else's stupid click on a button that they do or don't give to give them some sort of fake approval. They were able to learn the skill of I am great. I'm not a grasshopper. I have so much more to say on the subject. Obviously, we're way out of time. I just want to end off with a little tip, because I like giving you a gift every week of something or the other that may benefit you on a mystical or spiritual level, because I know today we're the world of mystics and sgulot and whatever else. Over the past almost 3 years now, I've spoken countless times about a great Hasidic Rebbe that I had the merit to be close to, the head of the Tosher Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha, Zchuto Yagen Aleinu. But I want to talk about a different Tosher Rebbe now, and not his son, Shibadel Chaim Tovim, that's alive. It's an amazing, amazing person, and a very dear person in my life. But there's somebody in his lineage, and I don't know how many great grandfathers back this goes exactly. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I don't know exactly the whatever. I just know the technical details. The Tosher Rebbe was a Meshulam Faish, the one that I knew. So there was a great-grandfather there somewhere in the lineage who was born in 1816, who had the same name. And he actually was born in Germany and then made his rounds and ended up in Tosh. I think he's even buried in Hungary today. And he didn't live a long life at all. He actually died in 1873, that's 57 years if you do the math. And he was a huge tzaddik. There's countless things to talk about and stories to say, but that can be your own homework. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because his yahrzeit is coming up I think it's Monday, Chet Sivan. Koach, it's easy to remember. Chet Sivan. A Meshulam Faish Segal, Lowy, the Tosher Rebbe, the first Tosher Rebbe. He's the one who began the lineage of Tosher Rebbes. Schutam Tagen Aleinu, they were all big tzaddikim. He was known to be a huge Baal Ruach HaKodesh. I'm just going to say two details briefly. Besides his Ruach HaKodesh, he was a known Poel Yeshuot, miracle maker in a crazy way. And the time that he would do the most extreme things that existed was on Friday nights. He had an interesting custom that you have to know I'm not coming to put the halachic implications on this, but Friday night by his tish, when the Hasidim gathered and they would have Sudat Shabbat together. So towards the end of the tish, they would stand and sing and dance. Now, you have to understand the halakha discussion, if you're allowed to dance on Shabbat or not, but they didn't dance the way we view dancing. They just stood and moved, swayed, as you can see in many videos of Hasidic weddings. And that for sure would be okay halachically. That he feels the strongest spiritual connection, and the merit of Shabbat, and the merit of the simcha of the people, and the merit of everything together, that's when in Shamayim he could do the most for people. So anybody who needed anything from him, he used to tell him to come Friday night, and he'll try. And he was a known Poel Yeshuot. There's an amazing story that one of his very, very famous Hasidim, who was an extremely wealthy man as well, his name was Shmuel Rosenfeld, a big tzaddik also wrote Sforim. He was once by him on a Friday night. And in the middle of this dance, or whatever you want to call it, the Rebbe turned to him and said, did you read Shnai Mikra Ve'echad Targum yet this week? And the man said, yes. He said, if that's the case, I'm sure you remember the psukim. So he said, yes. And he tells him, okay, so let me quote you a pasuk. We're talking about Chumash Shmot. Let me quote you a pasuk from the Torah. I'll tell you part, and you tell me the rest of the pasuk. The Chassid didn't understand. But the Rebbe is giving him a quiz in the middle of the tish, hundreds of people. But the Rebbe says, So, okay. He says, what pasuk? So the Rebbe turns to him and he says, what's the end of the pasuk that starts, Sakoli Sakel Hashor? That means that the ox should be stoned. So he answered, V'gam be'alav yumat. That's the end of the pasuk. And also his owners will die. These are halachot in mishpatim. So the Rebbe again asked him, what does it say at the end of the pasuk? Sakoli sakel hashor. So again he answered him, because he was quoting right. He quoted him the pasuk. And the Rebbe tells him, I thought you did Shnai Mikra Ve'echad Targum. You obviously didn't. You don't know the pasuk. And then it dawned on him that the same words say one pasuk prior to the pasuk that he was thinking in his mind. Same exact thing. Sakoli sakel hashor, just in a different context of a different halacha. And in that pasuk it says, a few words I'm skipping, Ubal hashor naki. And the owner of the ox will be clean, free. And then he told the Rebbe that. And the Rebbe smiled and said, oh, now you got it right. The Rebbe continued dancing in it for a long time. The night was over, next day, Shabbat, whatever, Saturday night, he went to say goodbye to the Rebbe. What do you think's playing in his head the whole night? What did the Rebbe want from me? What? Oxes and this and that. So when he got back to his house, the first thing he thought is probably the Rebbe was hinting to me that something went wrong with my flocks of animals. So he went into one of the places where he had tons of animals to see if they're okay or not. Because he was assuming the Rebbe was hinting to him a problem. And he walks in there, and he sees clearly that everything's fine. And now he's wondering even more, what does the Rebbe want? So he walks out to go to the next one. He had different places, barns, that his animals were kept. And right when he walks out, the entire barn collapses on all its animals. The animals die, and he's miraculously saved. And then he realized that Friday night the Rebbe saw in Shemayim that there's a gzera on this person that God forbid the building should collapse on him. And he got in this world that we should talk positive and say Ubal Hashor Naki, and not the other pasuk Ubal Hashor Yareg, that the owner of the ox should be clean, free, and not the one that says that he should be dead in order to save his life. Meaning, if you say about yourself you're stupid, you'll end up being stupid. If you say about yourself I can't, you won't be able to. If you say about yourself I'm this and that, that's what's going to happen. But in this world, if you say about yourself Ubal Hashor Naki, everything will be fine. Don't tell it to others, because you're not a prophet. To yourself. Then, at that point in Shemayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ubal Hashor Naki. I agree to that. Everything's going to be fine. And I just want to end off with his life. He died at the age of 57. Now, a lot of times it bothers us that many of these great tzaddikim died so young. Most of them died a lot younger than that. Not most, but many that we know. The Ari HaKadosh, 36, the Baal Shem Tov, Rab Nachman, all under 40. Many tzaddikim died very, very young. Many tzaddikim. He died 57, that's called old already in relative to those numbers, but it's still very young. And it hurts people inside, like, what? Why did these tzaddikim pass away? So in his case, it's very clear. In his town, there was a virus, a bacteria that was going around. This is obviously many years before antibiotics, and it was killing people right and left, to the point that even 2 of his own children died as a result. And there was mass death amongst the Jewish community. And he couldn't carry the pain. And one day he turned to his community and he said, my dear friends, I want to say goodbye to everybody, because I made a deal with God that he's going to take me and everybody else is going to live. This disease is going to stop. And that night he went to bed, said Vidui Kriyat Shema, and in the morning he had passed to Olam Haba and the disease disappeared. That means even his death was a death that was given for the sake of saving Klal Yisrael. That was his huge Ahavat Yisrael that he had. So his Yahrzeit is this coming week, on Monday, I think it is, Chavchet Iyar. And I have a very strong emotional connection to Tosh, as you know. And obviously, if this was the first Tosher Rebbe, then I have a very strong emotional connection to that as well. So I felt obligated to share with you that there was such a man, a little tiny minor glimpse into his greatness, and as well as that we should be aware that his Yahrzeit is coming up, and you should take a moment, either Sunday night or Monday, and say an extra Perek Tehillim, or read a Mishnah, or light a candle, or do all of the above, and say it should be Leilui Nishmat, the first Tosher Rebbe, and Bevadei, the power of this great tzaddik in Shemayim will be a Melitz Yosher on us, that we should have no more problems in life, we should have big Yeshuot, and Klal Yisrael should see Simcha Gdola, Amen, Amen. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.